The first sign that my life was about to implode came during my mother's annual spring garden party. I watched from across the manicured lawn as she pulled my husband aside, their heads bent close together like conspirators sharing secrets. My mother's perfectly manicured hand rested on Dexter's arm, her smile too bright, too knowing. I'm Angela, and until that moment, I thought I had the perfect life. Successful career, loving husband, beautiful home. But sometimes the things we think we know best are the ones that blind us the most. They've been awfully cozy lately, haven't they? Sasha appeared beside me, champagne flute in hand. My best friend had always been more perceptive than me when it came to family dynamics. Mom's always loved Dexter, I said, but the words felt hollow. Something had shifted in recent weeks. Subtle glances, hushed phone calls, my mother's increasingly frequent mentions of Juliana, Dexter's high school sweetheart. Angela, honey. My mother's voice cut through my thoughts. Come here, darling. Dexter and I were just discussing the most fascinating thing. I crossed the lawn, my heels sinking slightly into the grass. Up close, I could see the slight flush on Dexter's neck, the same flush he got when he was hiding something. What's fascinating, Mom? I kept my voice light, casual. Oh, just catching up about old times. You know, Juliana's back in town. Did Dexter mention that? My stomach dropped. No, he didn't. She's doing amazingly well. My mother continued, her eyes gleaming. Single again, running her own gallery downtown. You remember how talented she always was. Dexter wouldn't meet my eyes. He just stood there, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, like a guilty teenager. That night, after the party, I confronted him in our kitchen. The dishes from dinner sat unwashed in the sink, something that would normally drive me crazy, but suddenly seemed trivially unimportant. What's going on with you and my mother? I asked, watching him carefully. Nothing's going on, he said, but his voice wavered. Sarah's just being friendly. Friendly enough to arrange secret meetings with Juliana? His head snapped up. How did you— I didn't, until now. My hands gripped the kitchen counter. How long has this been going on? Angela, it's not what you think. Then what is it, Dexter? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my mother is playing matchmaker with my husband and his ex-girlfriend. He ran his hands through his hair, a nervous habit I used to find endearing. Your mother, she just thinks maybe we rushed into marriage, that maybe we should have explored other options. We've been married for 5 years. My voice cracked. 5 years, Dexter. And now my own mother is trying to set you up with Juliana? I've been thinking. He paused, and in that pause I heard the death of our marriage. Maybe she's right. Maybe we did rush things. The kitchen suddenly felt too small, too warm. Have you seen her, Juliana? His silence was answer enough. Get out, I whispered. Just get out. Angela. I said get out. I grabbed a coffee mug from the counter and hurled it at the wall. It shattered, sending ceramic shards skittering across the floor. Dexter jumped, finally showing some emotion other than guilty indecision. I'll stay at a hotel tonight, he said quietly. We can talk tomorrow when we're both calmer. I watched him grab his keys and wallet, listened to his footsteps fade away, heard the front door close with a decisive click. Only then did I allow myself to sink to the floor, my back against the kitchen cabinets. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. I hope you're not too upset, darling. Sometimes these things happen for the best. Juliana was always such a perfect match for him. I stared at the message until the words blurred. Then, with trembling fingers, I typed out a response. You've made your choice, Mom. Now I'll make mine. Blocking her number felt like cutting off a limb, but I did it anyway. Then I called Sasha. I need you to come over, I said when she answered. And bring wine. Lots of wine. I'm already on my way, she replied without hesitation. What happened? My mother happened, I said, looking at the broken mug on the floor. But they have no idea who they're dealing with. No idea at all. As I waited for Sasha, I made a silent vow to myself. They thought they could break me, reshape my life to fit their perfect little narrative. But I would show them all exactly what Angela Wade was capable of, and I would do it without making a sound. 3 days after Dexter left, I was staring blankly at my computer screen when Maxwell knocked on my office door. My business partner's usual confident stride was replaced with an almost nervous energy as he approached my desk. "You look like hell," he said, dropping into the chair across from me. "Thanks. That's exactly what every woman wants to hear." I tried to smile, but it felt more like a grimace. "I heard about Dexter." Maxwell leaned forward. "Office gossip travels fast. I'm sorry." "Don't be. Apparently my marriage was doomed from the start, if you ask my mother." I clicked aimlessly through some spreadsheets. Did you know she kept all of Dexter and Juliana's high school photos? She showed them at every family gathering, calling them the golden couple. I was just too blind to see what was happening. "Your mother sounds like a piece of work." "You have no idea." I rubbed my temples. Last Christmas, she gave Dexter a scrapbook filled with their old memories. Called it nostalgia. I called it sabotage. Maxwell shifted in his seat, then pulled out his tablet. "Listen, I came here to show you something. Maybe it's bad timing, but..." He paused, tapping the screen. "Remember that sustainable housing project we discussed last year? The one the board shot down? What about it?" "I've been doing some research. The market's changed. Look at these numbers." He turned the tablet toward me, showing graphs and projections. We were ahead of our time then, but now, the demand for eco-friendly, affordable housing is exploding. For the first time in days, something other than betrayal occupied my mind. These projections are incredible. That's not all. Maxwell's eyes lit up. "Remember Yvette Hoffman? She's interested in backing us if we want to pursue this independently. Yvette?" I sat up straighter. "The same Yvette who turned our original pitch into confetti?" "She's seen the market shift. Plus, your reputation in the industry has grown significantly since then." He leaned back, watching me carefully. "This could be huge, Angela. We're talking about revolutionizing affordable housing in the city." My phone buzzed. Another message from Dexter, probably apologizing again while packing more of his things from our house. I turned it face down. "When do we meet with Yvette?" Maxwell blinked, surprised by my quick response. "You want to do this? Now?" "Why not now?" I stood up, pacing behind my desk. My husband's leaving me for his high school sweetheart, orchestrated by my own mother. I need something to focus on besides their betrayal. "This won't be easy," Maxwell warned. "We'd be starting from scratch, building everything from the ground up." "Good." I stopped pacing. "I need something impossible to accomplish, something they'll never see coming." Just then, Sasha burst into my office, her face flushed. "Angela, you need to see this." She thrust her phone at me. On the screen was a social media post. My mother, Dexter, and Juliana at some fancy restaurant downtown. All smiles and champagne toasts. "Already making it public," I said, my voice flat. "Subtle, Mom. Real subtle." "I'll kill them all," Sasha declared, snatching her phone back. "Just say the word." "No," I said, looking at Maxwell. "I have a better idea." I turned back to Sasha. "How would you like to help us build something amazing?" "Us?" Sasha looked between Maxwell and me. "Maxwell just showed me an opportunity that could change everything, but we'll need your PR expertise." Maxwell pulled up the project details again, and for the next hour, we planned. With each detail we discussed, each possibility we explored, I felt stronger. The pain was still there, but now it had purpose. As they were leaving my office, Maxwell turned back. "You sure about this? It's a big undertaking." "You know what my mother said when I told her I was marrying Dexter?" I asked, gathering my things. "She said I was settling for less than I deserved. Turns out she was right, just not in the way she meant." "Where are you going?" Sasha asked. "To see Yvette," I replied, grabbing my coat. "Time to show them all exactly what I deserve." As I drove to Yvette's office, my mother's words from countless family dinners echoed in my head. Juliana always had such ambition, such drive. The memory stung, but it also fueled me. They thought they knew what ambition looked like. They hadn't seen anything yet. I parked outside Yvette's building, checking my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes were tired but determined. Game on, I whispered to myself, grabbing my portfolio. It was time to build something bigger than their betrayal. The prototype designs look promising, Yvette said, examining the blueprints spread across her mahogany desk. 2 weeks had passed since our first meeting, and we'd been working nonstop. But what about the cost analysis? I pulled out another document. We've found ways to cut construction costs by 30% using sustainable materials. Maxwell's connections in the green building industry are proving invaluable. And the location? We've identified 3 potential sites. I pointed to the map. This one's our favorite, the old industrial district. Perfect for renovation, close to public transport, and the city's offering tax incentives for development. Yvette nodded slowly, her silver hair catching the afternoon light. You've thought this through, but tell me, Angela, why now? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Another text from my mother. Family dinner tonight. Juliana's making her famous lasagna. Please come, darling. Let's be adults about this. I switched off the screen. Because it's time to build something that matters. This wouldn't have anything to do with your personal situation? Does it matter? I met her gaze. You taught me yourself. Motivation is irrelevant if the business plan is solid. She smiled, a rare sight. True. Very well, I'm in. Full backing as discussed. Don't make me regret this. Later that evening, I was reviewing contracts with Maxwell when Sasha burst into the office, waving her phone. You won't believe this. Your mother just announced on Facebook that Dexter and Juliana are moving in together. In your old neighborhood. Maxwell winced. That's cold. I kept my eyes on the contracts. Let them play house. We have work to do. But Angela? The environmental impact study came back positive. I interrupted, sliding a document toward her. We need a press release ready by Monday. Sasha sighed but took the paper. Fine, but you can't avoid this forever. Watch me. The next morning, I arrived early at the construction site. Workers were already setting up, preparing for the groundbreaking ceremony next month. Maxwell was there, hard hat in hand. You're here early, he said, handing me a coffee. Couldn't sleep. Might as well be productive. I took a sip. The contractor called. Materials are coming in under budget. That's not why you're here at dawn. I watched a bulldozer rumble past. Dexter came by the house yesterday. Wanted to talk about selling it. What did you say? Nothing. I let him stand there knocking while I worked on the project presentation in the kitchen. I smiled grimly. Petty? Maybe. Satisfying? Definitely. Angela. A familiar voice made my stomach clench. My mother was walking toward us, designer heels completely inappropriate for a construction site. Mom, what are you doing here? You won't answer my calls. I had to track you down. She looked around disdainfully. What is all this? This is my new project, a sustainable housing development. Housing development? She laughed. Darling, you work in corporate finance. Worked, I corrected. I'm running this now, with Maxwell and Yvette Hoffman's backing. Her smile faltered. Yvette Hoffman? The real estate mogul? The same. I checked my watch. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have a meeting. Angela, don't be difficult. Come to dinner tonight. Juliana's been asking about you. I'm sure she has. I turned to Maxwell. The investors are waiting. Angela. Goodbye, Mom. As we walked away, Maxwell whispered, That was intense. Just wait until the groundbreaking ceremony. We're inviting every media outlet in the city. You're going to make them watch your success? No. I smiled. I'm going to make them part of it. Nothing hurts more than being forced to applaud someone you tried to break. That evening, I sat in my office, looking at the project renderings. My phone lit up with a text from Dexter. Sarah says you're working on some big project. Why didn't you tell me? I typed back. You lost the right to know what I'm doing when you chose my mother's fantasy over our reality. His response came quickly. It wasn't like that. I was confused. No, I wrote. You were weak. But thanks for that. Your weakness is fueling something extraordinary. I blocked his number before he could respond, then called Sasha. Remember that idea you had about featuring local success stories in the marketing campaign? Yeah? Let's do it, but let's make it bigger. I want billboards, social media, the works. Show everyone what's possible when you refuse to break. Now you're talking, she said. Want me to make sure they're visible from your old neighborhood? I thought about my mother's perfectly manicured lawn, about Dexter and Juliana playing house nearby. Make sure they can see them from every angle. The day Dexter officially moved out was the same day our project made the local news. I watched from my kitchen window as he loaded the last of his boxes into a rental truck, while the morning news played on my tablet. A revolutionary approach to sustainable housing, the anchor was saying. The development promises to transform the city's affordable housing landscape. The truck's engine started up just as my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Juliana standing there, looking perfectly put together in a summer dress. I thought I should help him move, she said, as if this was completely normal. We need to talk, Angela. No, we really don't. I moved to close the door, but she blocked it with her foot. Your mother's worried about you. All this work stuff, the radio silence. It's not healthy. I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. My mother's worried? That's rich. Tell me, Juliana, did she plan your reunion with Dexter before or after our last anniversary? She had the grace to look uncomfortable. It wasn't planned. These things just happen. These things just happen? I stepped onto the porch, forcing her to back up. Like the dinner party she threw where she just happened to invite you? The old photos she kept bringing up? The late-night phone calls? Sarah was just trying to... To what? Help her daughter's husband cheat? Create the perfect little story she always wanted? You're being dramatic, Juliana said, but her voice wavered. We can all be adults about this. My phone buzzed. Maxwell calling. I answered it deliberately, maintaining eye contact with Juliana. The investors are here early, he said. They want to discuss expanding the project to other cities. I'll be there in 20. I hung up and turned back to Juliana. You know what's funny? For years, I tried to live up to this perfect image my mother had of you. Now I realize it was the best favor she could have done me. What do you mean? She made me stop trying to be you and start being myself. I gestured to the moving truck where Dexter was watching us. He's all yours. Hope you both enjoy my mother's version of happiness. I grabbed my briefcase and car keys, walking past them without another word. In my rearview mirror, I watched them standing in my driveway, looking lost in the morning sun. At the office, Maxwell was waiting with a vet and a group of investors. Their excitement was palpable as we went through the presentation. The social media response has been overwhelming, Sasha reported, pulling up the analytics. People are already asking about waiting lists. And the environmental impact reports are exceeding expectations, Maxwell added. We're setting new standards for sustainable development. Halfway through the meeting, my phone lit up with a text from my mother. Just helped Dexter and Juliana settle into their new place. Stop this foolishness and come see them. Family should stick together. I showed the message to Sasha during our coffee break. The nerve of that woman, she muttered. Want me to accidentally send her our press coverage? No need, I smiled. She'll see it soon enough. The billboard goes up tomorrow, right across from her favorite shopping center. That evening, as I was leaving the office, I found Dexter waiting by my car. Nice press coverage, he said, hands in his pockets. Why didn't you ever tell me you wanted to do something like this? I did, multiple times. You were too busy listening to my mother's stories about Juliana's art gallery to hear me. That's not fair. No, what's not fair is having to compete with a fantasy my mother created. I unlocked my car. How's the new place? It's different. He shifted uncomfortably. Sarah's been helping us decorate. Of course she has. I opened the car door. You know what the funny thing is, Dexter? I actually feel sorry for you both. What's that supposed to mean? You'll never live up to her perfect story. And when you fail, she'll find someone else to cast in her little drama. I got into the car. But by then, it won't be my problem anymore. As I drove away, I caught his reflection in my mirror, standing alone in the parking lot. My phone buzzed with another message from my mother, but I didn't need to read it. Tomorrow, my face would be on billboards across the city, announcing our project's success. Let them see what their betrayal built. I turned up the radio, drowning out thoughts of them playing happy family in their new home. They had no idea what was coming, and that was the sweetest revenge of all. We have a problem. Maxwell burst into my office, his face pale. The environmental survey missed something. There's contaminated soil in the east sector of the site. I looked up from my laptop. How bad? Bad enough to halt construction. The cleanup could cost millions we don't have budgeted. My stomach dropped, but I kept my voice steady. Get everyone in the conference room, now. Within 15 minutes, our core team was assembled. Sasha was already working her phone, trying to get ahead of any potential PR disaster. Yvette sat at the head of the table, her expression unreadable. Show me the numbers, she said. I pulled up the emergency assessment on the screen. The contamination is contained to about 20% of the site. Initial estimates for cleanup are looking at $3 million, minimum. That's not in the budget, one of the junior partners said. We should cut our losses. No. I stood up, pointing to the site plans. Look, if we redesign the layout, shift the residential units to the clean zones, and turn the contaminated area into a community green space after cleanup. That's still $3 million we don't have. Maxwell interrupted. I'll cover it, I said quietly. The room fell silent. Angela, Sasha started, that's your entire savings. And the house money. I know exactly what it is. I met Yvette's gaze. I'm all in. Are you with me? Before she could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Darling, heard about the construction problems. Perhaps this is a sign to stop this foolishness. Dexter says his firm is hiring. I switched off the phone. Well, Yvette stood slowly. Match her investment, she told the room. I want everyone who believes in this project to put their money where their mouth is. Angela's right. We're not stopping now. The next few hours were a blur of calls, contracts, and commitments. By evening, we had the funding secured, but the stress had left its mark. I sat alone in my office, staring at the city lights, when Sasha walked in with 2 glasses of wine. Your mother's been calling me, she said, handing me a glass. Apparently, Juliana's gallery is struggling. She thought maybe you could help out for family's sake. I took a long sip. The gallery was my mother's idea, wasn't it? Yep. Convinced Juliana to quit her stable job and follow her passion. Sasha made air quotes. Just like she convinced Dexter that you were holding him back. How do you know that? Small town. People talk. She sat on my desk. Especially when Juliana's new gallery is hemorrhaging money and Dexter's realizing that love doesn't pay the bills. A knock at the door interrupted us. Maxwell entered, followed by Yvette. The contractors agreed to our new timeline, Maxwell said. And the PR team has a plan to spin this into a positive, showing our commitment to environmental responsibility. Good. I stood up. Because we're not just fixing this site. We're going to make it better than before. That's why I backed you, Yvette said, smiling slightly. You don't break, you build. Speaking of building, Sasha pulled out her tablet. Wait until you see the new billboard designs. They're going up next week, right when the art fair starts near Juliana's gallery. Sasha, I warned. What? Pure coincidence. She grinned. Just like it's a coincidence that our community outreach program is hosting events in your old neighborhood. Focus on the project, I said, but I couldn't help smiling. We have real work to do. Later that night, as I was leaving, I found a note on my car. Dexter's handwriting. I heard about the construction issues. Maybe we should talk. I miss you. I crumpled the note and pulled out my phone, calling Maxwell. Remember that idea about adding a cultural center to the development? I asked when he answered. Let's do it, but not just any center. I want something that will make a small art gallery look like a kid's lemonade stand. Now you're just being petty, he said, but I could hear him smiling. No, I'm being strategic. My mother wanted to create her perfect story. Fine. I'm writing my own, and it's going to be bigger than anything she could have imagined. I drove home past my mother's house, where lights blazed in the windows. Through the glass, I could see them all, Mom, Dexter, and Juliana, sitting around the dinner table like some twisted Norman Rockwell painting. Let them have their dinner parties in struggling gallery. I had a city to transform, and their perfect little world was about to become very, very small in comparison. The invitation arrived on fancy cream-colored paper, my mother's signature flourish. A family celebration, it read, announcing a dinner party to welcome Juliana officially into the family. 6 months had passed since Dexter left, and my mother still couldn't resist twisting the knife. You're not actually going, are you? Sasha asked when I showed her. Oh, I'm going. I checked my phone, where Maxwell had just sent confirmation. And I'm bringing guests. The night of the dinner, I arrived fashionably late, wearing a red dress that cost more than Juliana's monthly gallery rent. Maxwell and Yvette flanked me as we walked in. Angela. My mother's smile faltered when she saw my companions. I wasn't expecting you to bring anyone. Mother, you remember Maxwell. And of course, you know Yvette Hoffman. My mother's eyes widened at Yvette's name. The real estate developer? But, Sarah, Yvette said smoothly, your daughter's quite the force in our industry now. Surely you've been following her success. Before my mother could respond, Dexter appeared with Juliana. He stopped short when he saw me, his eyes lingering on my dress. Angela, Juliana said, her voice overly bright. We've missed you at the gallery openings. Been busy, I replied, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing server. Building things. Yes, well. My mother clapped her hands. Shall we move to the dining room? I've prepared all of Juliana's favorites. The dinner was exactly as I expected. My mother fawning over Juliana while shooting concerned looks my way. But tonight I had an ace up my sleeve. So, Juliana, Yvette said during the main course, I hear the art market's been challenging lately. Juliana pushed her food around her plate. It's a transitional period. Speaking of transitions, Maxwell cut in, right on cue. Angela, shall we share our news? My mother's fork clattered against her plate. News? I took a deliberate sip of wine. The development project has been so successful, we're expanding. 3 new sites, including a major cultural center. Cultural center? Juliana's head snapped up. State-of-the-art galleries, performance spaces, artist residencies. I continued. We're revolutionizing the local art scene. In fact, Yvette just secured the funding this morning. This morning? My mother's voice was faint. But that must be millions. 50 million to be exact, Yvette said. Your daughter's quite the visionary, Sarah. The mayor's office is already calling it a game changer for the city. I watched Dexter's face as he processed the numbers. He worked in finance. He knew exactly what this meant. But that's, Juliana started. More than 10 times your gallery's annual revenue? I finished for her. Yes, it is. My mother stood abruptly. I need to check on dessert. Let me help, I said, following her into the kitchen. She was gripping the counter when I entered. Was this necessary? Bringing them here, flaunting your success? Necessary? No. Satisfying? Absolutely. I leaned against the door frame. You spent years trying to make me feel small, Mom, pushing Dexter toward Juliana, undermining every choice I made. I was trying to help. You were trying to control, to create your perfect story. Well, guess what? My story's bigger than anything you could have written for me. Angela, the Cultural Center opens next spring. I cut her off. We're already booked solid with international artists. Funny how your perfect couple's struggling gallery seems a bit provincial in comparison. Back in the dining room, Dexter was deep in conversation with Maxwell about investment opportunities. Juliana sat silent, pushing dessert around her plate. Everything all right? Yvette asked them. You both seem quiet. Fine, Juliana said quickly. Just processing. A lot to process, I agreed, sitting back down. But isn't that what family dinners are for? Sharing big news? My mother returned, her perfect hostess mask slightly cracked. More wine, anyone? Actually, we should go. I stood, gathering my things. Early meeting tomorrow. We're announcing the Cultural Center's first season of exhibitions. I'll walk you out, Dexter said suddenly. At the door, he touched my arm. Angela, Don't. I pulled away. You made your choice, Dexter. Now live with it. As we drove away, Maxwell laughed. That was better than any revenge movie I've ever seen. It wasn't revenge, I said, watching my mother's house disappear in the rearview mirror. It was a declaration of independence. But we all knew it was both. The day of the Cultural Center's press launch dawned bright and clear. I stood at the podium, cameras flashing as I unveiled our vision to the world. The mayor sat to my right, beaming, while Yvette and Maxwell flanked me on the left. This isn't just about buildings, I told the crowd. It's about creating spaces where dreams can grow, where anyone with vision can find their place. From the corner of my eye, I spotted them. My mother, Dexter, and Juliana hovering at the back of the crowd. They hadn't been invited, but I knew they'd come. My mother never could resist a public spectacle. After the speeches during the champagne reception, Dexter approached me alone. Impressive, he said, gesturing at the architectural models. Really impressive. Where's Juliana? I asked, scanning the room. Shouldn't she be networking? This is an art space, after all. He shifted uncomfortably. She's taking a break from the gallery. Things haven't been going well. I heard something about major artists pulling out to join our residency program instead. Before he could respond, Maxwell appeared at my side. Angela, the Japanese investors are here. They're excited about expanding to Tokyo. Tokyo? Dexter's eyes widened. Just the beginning, Maxwell said, not bothering to hide his smile. Angela's become quite the international name in sustainable development. I excused myself, leaving Dexter standing there. As I worked the room, I caught glimpses of my mother's face, the forced smile growing more strained with each person who came to congratulate me. Your daughter is remarkable, I overheard the mayor telling her. She's single-handedly changing the face of our city. Yes, my mother replied tightly. She's always been ambitious. Later, during a quiet moment, Sasha pulled me aside. Juliana's crying in the bathroom. Apparently, her last major artist just signed with us instead of her gallery. How tragic, I said, but there was no joy in it. The victory felt different than I'd imagined. Not sweet, just final. Angela. My mother's voice came from behind me. We need to talk. I turned to face her. She looked older somehow, smaller. I'm quite busy, Mom. Please. Her voice cracked slightly. 5 minutes. We stepped onto the balcony overlooking the development site. Construction crews were already at work below, the future taking shape in steel and glass. I was wrong, she said quietly. About what specifically? Undermining my marriage? Pushing Dexter toward Juliana? Or just generally trying to control my life? All of it. She gripped the railing. I thought I knew what was best. I thought Juliana was the perfect match for Dexter, that you were settling for less than you deserved. And now? Now I see that I was the one who didn't see your worth. She turned to me, tears in her eyes. You've built something extraordinary, Angela. Something I never could have imagined for you. That's the problem, Mom. You never tried to imagine what I could do. You were too busy trying to reshape me into your vision. A commotion inside drew our attention. Through the glass doors, I could see Dexter arguing with Juliana, their perfect facade cracking under the weight of reality. They're struggling, my mother admitted. The gallery's failing, and Dexter, he's not the man I thought he was. No, I agreed. He's exactly who he always was. Weak. You just couldn't see it through your rose-colored glasses. Maxwell appeared at the door. Angela, the governor's here. I have to go, I told my mother. Can we try again? She asked. To have a relationship? I looked at her for a long moment. Maybe, but not on your terms anymore. I'm not that person anymore. Back inside, I passed Dexter and Juliana as they were leaving. He reached for my arm, but I stepped away. Angela, please, he said. I made a mistake. No, Dexter, you made a choice. Several choices, actually, and now you get to live with them. I walked away, toward the governor and the future I'd built from the ashes of their betrayal. Behind me, I heard Juliana's muffled sobs, my mother's attempts at comfort. You okay? Maxwell asked quietly. I looked around the room, at the investors eager to work with us, at Yvette's proud smile, at Sasha filming everything for our social media. You know what? I said, straightening my shoulders. I really am. Because the best revenge wasn't destroying their perfect little world. It was building something so much bigger that their world became irrelevant. The ribbon-cutting ceremony for the cultural center drew crowds that stretched around the block. I stood back, watching artists and residents explore the spaces we'd created. The galleries, workshops, and community areas already buzzing with life. They're calling it the crown jewel of the city, Maxwell said, appearing beside me with 2 glasses of champagne. Not bad for someone who is just settling. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see our housing development stretching into the distance. Homes filled with families. Dreams taking root in soil we'd healed and transformed. Ms. Angela? A young woman approached, clutching a portfolio. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to thank you. The residency program, it changed my life. Before I could respond, I heard a familiar voice. Angela. I turned to find Juliana standing there, looking less polished than usual. The gallery's closing, she said without preamble. I thought you should hear it from me. I know, I replied. I bought it yesterday. Her face paled. What? We're turning it into a community art space. Free classes for kids, workshops for emerging artists. I gestured to the young woman with the portfolio. Maria here will be running it. Juliana's lips trembled. I suppose you're happy now. You've won. This was never about winning, Juliana. It was about building something meaningful. I handed her my card. If you want to teach art classes, call me. But this time, you'll have to earn your place. She left without responding, passing Sasha, who was approaching with Yvette. Your mother's here, Sasha warned. She's by the main entrance. I found her standing alone, staring at the donor wall where her name was conspicuously absent. Hello, Mom. This is extraordinary, she said softly. All of it. She turned to face me. Dexter moved out last week, back to his old apartment. I heard. I was wrong about so many things. She reached for my hand. Can I show you something? She led me to her car and pulled out a box. Inside were photographs, not the ones of Dexter and Juliana she'd always paraded around, but ones of me. Me graduating college, starting my first job, wedding photos I thought she'd ignored. I kept these too, she said. I got so caught up in the story I thought should happen, I missed the amazing story that was actually unfolding. Mom, let me finish. I saw the community programs you're launching, the families you're helping. You've created something beautiful, Angela. Something real. She closed the box. I'm proud of you, and I'm sorry it took me so long to see you. Before I could respond, Maxwell called out. Angela, the mayor's ready for the dedication. Go, my mother said. This is your moment. As I walked toward the podium, I passed Dexter standing near the back. Our eyes met briefly, but there was nothing left to say. His presence barely registered anymore. just another face in a crowd that had gathered to celebrate something bigger than our past. Today isn't just about buildings, I told the audience. It's about transformation, about taking broken things and making them whole in new ways, about creating spaces where people can write their own stories. I caught Yvette's proud smile, saw Maxwell and Sasha beaming from the front row. My mother stood at the back, really seeing me perhaps for the first time. Someone once told me I was settling for less than I deserved. I continued. They were right, but not in the way they meant. We all deserve to build something meaningful, to create something that outlasts our pain. After the ceremony, as the sun set over our creation, I stood with my team on the rooftop garden. To new beginnings, Maxwell raised his glass. To karma, Sasha added with a wink. To building something real, I said, looking out over the city we'd helped transform. Below, people streamed in and out of the cultural center, their voices carrying up to us on the evening breeze. Artists, families, dreamers, all finding their place in the spaces we'd created from my mother's betrayal and Dexter's weakness. I thought about the young artists like Maria, about the families in our housing development, about all the stories that would unfold here. My mother had tried to write my story, but instead, she'd pushed me to create something bigger than any of us had imagined. Ready for Tokyo? Maxwell asked. I smiled, feeling the last weights of the past finally fall away. Ready for everything, because sometimes the best endings aren't about getting even or looking back. They're about building something so magnificent that the past becomes nothing more than foundation stones in the empire you've created.